Welcome back. Well, the last time you saw my channel, you saw us take the cab and the bed off this chassis right here from the 1965. Also, if you viewed one of my others, you saw some of the products that'll be going on this chassis for our Crown Vic swap and for our Coyote swap. Well, now we're going to get right in, start tearing this suspension down, and get ready to cut that crossmember out. Now, on the rear of this, we're also going to be taking off all the original hangers for the leaf springs in the front and the rear. I was going to go with the 4-link system, but I think I might go with another setup that just might surprise you. I'm going to go ahead and jump into this and get these hangers cut out. Go ahead and get that started. These right here, none of them had nuts on them. All these right here were already missing the nuts. So somebody's been driving this thing like that. Now we just got to beat them out. Rear end's out. Now time to get these hangers off. Now using our air chisel, it should make light work of punching out these rivets. There it is. Now we'll just grind these down flat with the frame, punch them out. Okay, the rear end is out. I have my hangers, the rivets ground off, and I also have them knocked out with an air chisel. Now some of them, I didn't get them out first time I go around. All you have to do is ground them flat and hit it again with the air chisel and they should come out. But now if the rear end's out of here, now it's time to go to the front end. All right, we've got that rear end out. We've got the hangers and leaf springs off. The rivets also ground out. Now it's time to get this front suspension out to get our K-member for our Crown Vic setup sitting into place. So first what we're going to do, we're going to start by getting all this old I-beam system pulled out. So we'll start by, we're going to loosen up these sections here. I've already taken the nuts loose for the shocks. I'm going to take all the I-beam nut and bolts out to get them to lower down. Take this rear section loose. Hopefully all that will drop out. Raise the frame up. Then we start grinding all these rivets out. The nut that holds on the front I-beam is a 15/16. So that's what you'll be needing on this 65 frame. Now if you're not worried about saving these, I would just get a hammer, knock those out. If you want to save them, take your nut, screw it with a few threads on the end of the bolt, and then use the hammer to knock it out without damaging those threads. But in our case, it's junk. Next, you want to get this key right here out so that you can loosen this nut. This one is rusted in. It ain't gonna be able to come out. So I'm just gonna take a cutoff wheel, make a notch here, make a notch here. That nut should spin right out. One note I'd like to make, before loosening up all your suspension, to keep it from crashing down, possibly hurting yourself, make sure you've got it strapped down or secured somehow before loosening the bolts. That way once you drop it, you can take it loose. Now that the frame is sitting on the ground, my suspension is also on the ground. There's no worry for the suspension falling and causing any damage or harm to me. So I can take the straps loose, simply raise the frame up off the suspension. There it is, the suspension's off. Now it's just time to go ahead and get that K-member cut out. Before you take this cross member out, it's a good idea to weld something onto your frame horns side to side so that you can make sure your frame doesn't spread out after you've cut this. I've measured from inside to inside. This is going to be my steel bar that I'm going to use for reinforcement. I'm going to cut it 34 inches. Rather than using my chop saw over there, I'm just going to use a handheld grinder because that's what most people will be using. Here's the rod that I just cut at 34 inches. It's going to go from inside the frame. I'm going to measure it up to be center, and I'm going to hold it into place with a clamp. And then I'm going to put some tack welds, measure again, make sure it's straight, and then weld it solid. At 1 3/4 to the top of my frame, that's where I'm going to set my rod. And then that's where I'm going to be welding it in place. Cross member's been cut out. Now all this stuff right here can be cut out and cleaned up a little bit better and get ready for my cuts from my crown bit kit. And there's those hangers. Alright, we got our hangers off. Our cross member's out. Now we have this little bit of a mess right here that we've got to clean up. Now I have the Hobart plasma cutter. So if you have a plasma cutter, this part of the job is a whole lot easier because all you're going to require is a plasma cutter and a good grinder. The inner section of this cross member is pushed through the frame and welded on the back side, which you can easily cut with an easy cutoff wheel. But on the inside, they bolted it with 2 bolts from the factory, then they did the riveting. But they also welded a seam of a weld at the bottom of the front, one at the back, and also on the inside of the center section of the cross member. Well, for a plasma cutter, you can cut on the inside all the way down that line, not to put too much heat or damage your frame with the cutter, and then get the grinder and grind that off. Well, that's what we're going to do now. Alright, you can tell making those cuts, cutting the inside of a plasma cutter, my pry bar makes ease of getting this intersection out. And right there is the intersection of your cross member. Now with that out, you can finish cleaning up those rivets, getting all the welds ground down, smoothing this up, get ready for your crown bit kit. Or if you're going to use the steel piping, you can cut your pipe at the length you need, drill your holes in the top, a hole in the bottom for the screw, and just simply slide that down, let it rest on the frame, weld it on the top, weld it on the inside, and then you're done. Well, alright, our frame is sitting on our Crown Vic suspension K-member. I'm not going to go ahead and button it up because we're not quite ready. All I'm doing here is to show you how well this thing fits within the chassis of the 66, 67 Ford F100s. Now there's something else I'd like to show you that's kind of really neat about these Ford truck frames and the Crown Vic suspension. Here you notice on the Crown Vic suspension, it has a lineup dial factory on the K-member on each side. Ford already has this hole in their frame. All you have to do is get this hole and bevel it out a little larger, and it'll actually line up and be center to your front end from the factory. Well, that's it for our tear down on our frame, getting it ready for your Crown Victoria front suspension swap. I have shown you what it looks like with that suspension sitting in place. Our next video, we're going to be installing that front suspension and get some of these box end plates right here and getting them cut for the frame, welded in, and getting it on the Crown Vic and getting it mounted up. But we'll save that for the next video. Until then, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button, and thanks for watching.